David Spada is a successful attorney whose dream was to become a sports talk show host. Elliott Harris is a Chicago sports columnist who wanted to expand his media presence. In the next hour, they combine their talents and love of sports and women by interviewing former professional athletes and lovely ladies on sports and torts. But keeping the boys out of trouble isn't always easy, because when David and Elliott are together, they have more fun than should be legal.
Welcome to another edition of Sports and Torts on Talk Zone with David Spada and Elliott Harris. Last time I checked, am Elliott Harris, which means David Spada is not in studio today. Either that or he's the invisible man. Even so, I think you'll enjoy this hour. We have a couple of great interviews. The first one being Hall of Fame pitcher Fergie Jenkins.
When the Philadelphia Phillies drafted you, how did they find you in Canada, or were you living in the United States at the time?
No, I was in Chatham, Ontario, and the draft system hadn't come into effect yet. So I was just signed out of high school in 1962. Tony Lucadello, that lived in Fostoria, Ohio, would travel, Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, and lucky enough, from information that was given to him by a lot of other people, he decided to come to my hometown in Chatham. And I was just a young kid, 15, 16 years old, learning how to pitch, and with the instructions that a lot of the Philly brass gave him with, I think, information on how to pitch. I got scouted by the organization for almost 2 years in Chatham, playing sandlot ball, went to a bunch of camps, went to camp in Buffalo, one in Detroit, one in Ypsilanti, Michigan, one in Ann Arbor, and over the course of doing that, signed a pro contract with the Philadelphia Phillies.
Now, were you disappointed that nobody came after you to play hockey?
Somewhat I was. I was a decent hockey player. I was a decent basketball player, too, but I think baseball won out over the other two because of the fact that when I really learned how to pitch and deliver the ball correctly, I think that was probably going to be my best sport.
When you came up with the Phillies, you came up as a reliever. Was there thought of keeping you as a reliever, or was it basically a training ground to become a starting pitcher?
Well, in the minor leagues, I had the 2.5 seasons I played with the Phillies. I started off as a starter in D-ball, then A, AA, and then when I went to AAA, they had a lot of named starters, so I was put in the bullpen for about 3 or 4 months. And it was a different transition for me, learning how to get ready within 10 or 12 pitches, which ordinarily as a starter, you've got 20 minutes to really work on certain pitches. But as a bullpen pitcher, you've got 8 or 9 in the bullpen, and you got another 8 or 9 on the mound. So I was able to really put things together after about 16, 17 pitches. And when they called me up, that's basically what I really worked at to be a bullpen pitcher. And I came up in 65, won some ball games, and won a job again in 66. And then I got traded to Chicago Cubs, which I think really turned my career around with Leo DeRocher.
How did Leo turn it around for you?
Well, I joined the ball club early in April. I was in the bullpen for almost 4 months. And I just think that he decided that I'd done enough, proved that I could pitch, throw strikes, get people out. He gave me an opportunity to start, and I think my first start was in Atlanta. Late August. Won the ball game. I had like 7 or 8 starts near the end of the season. We had young pitchers like Kitty Holson, Bill Hands, Rich Nye, and the late Joe Necro. So we were all pretty young. We were all like 23, 24 years old. So that was going to be the staff that he was going to put together, and I was going to be one of them. And I won that job, and I was pretty happy that he gave me that opportunity.
So your first start against the Braves, what did they have? Hank Aaron, Eddie Matthews, all those guys on that team at that time?
Yeah, Joe Torre, Tito Francona. They had Rico Cardi. They had a pretty good hitting ball club, and I was fortunate enough to get them out and won a ball game. And I think the next start I had was against Cincinnati. I'm not sure if I got a no decision or I won, but I didn't lose a ball game. And until September, and out of the 7 or 8 starts, I won 6 of them. So I was pretty fortunate that I got that opportunity. The team played good behind me and scored me some runs, and I kind of proved that I could, be a starter. And the next year, in 1967, in spring training, Leo had made a couple of statements. We're going to use 4 young pitchers, myself included, Kenny Holson, Bill Hands, and Rich Nye, and myself, to be the starters on the staff, because there was only 9 pitchers on the team. So I won a job opening day, beat the Phillies 4-2 in 1967, and put that string of 20 games together.
When you started, you finished, because that was an era where they didn't have the well-defined relief roles that they do today.
And no, our 2 relief pitchers that were a little older. Phil Reagan was in his mid-30s, along with Ted Abernathy. So we had young starters. So Leo would say, hey, if you guys are in control of the game, you're going to stay in the game, because Kenny Holson was a pretty good hitter. Bill Hands could bunt, move the runners around, and so was Rich Nye, and I was a decent hitter. So I just think that the complete game stat back in the 60s was real popular, because if you were facing another young pitcher like a Seaver or a Carlton, Gibson, Marichal, Bunning, whoever, they weren't going to go 6 innings. So you had to stay out there and prove that you were capable of pitching deep into the game, maybe 7, 8, 9 innings.
How was Leo DeRocher different than your first manager, Gene Mock?
Well, I thought they were pretty much the same. They were ruled the staff and the ball club with a pretty much iron fist. They wanted you to perform. They want you to go out there and prove your worth. Leo, and I had him for 8 years. I only had Gene Mock briefly for a month or so, but with the spring trainings that I had with the Phillies, you kind of could see what management was all about, and they were no nonsense. I just think that when I got traded to the Cubs, Leo had a young ball club. The 3 veterans were Ernie Banks, Billy Williams, and Ron Santo. Young guys like Beckert and Kessinger, Hundley, I'm trying to think, Adolfo Phillips and a few other guys in the outfield. So I just think that when he took a look at that young pitching staff, he just basically told himself and the players that if you guys can do the job and you're capable of it, you're going to stay out there and you're going to win some ball games. And we kind of turned the Cubs situation around from being the bottom half of the ball season. I think in 66 we lost 103 ball games, and in 67 we turned it around again in 68, and then we're picked to win in 69. And I just think that when you're on the bottom half of your division, you're not doing anything. You're staying there. You're kind of quagmired, and unfortunately, Leo didn't want that to happen in the organization, and we started to win. We started to really move up in the division, and by 69, we were picked to win.
And, you got off to a decent start enough. Did you think 69 you guys would win?
Well, we stayed in first place for over 5 months, and, you don't want to slump at the tail end of the season, especially in September, and that's what happened to us. The last 15 games, we played well, we just didn't score runs. And you lose 2-1, 3-2, 4-3. We just couldn't win that important game to put us over the hump. The Cardinals were tough, the Mets, along with the Phillies and Cincinnati. And unfortunately, the Mets just put it all together, and they end up winning winning the division. Then they beat the Atlanta Braves, and they went on to the World Series and then beat Baltimore.
People make a lot to do about the day games hurting the 69 club, saying they were tired at the end of the year. Do you agree with that?
No, I disagree. We weren't tired. Leo played the guys that were capable of going out there and winning ball games. We had a regular lineup. Beckert and Kessinger second and short. Ronnie at third. Ernie Banks at first. Billy Williams in left field. Don Young and Adolfo in center field. And we had 3 right fielders that year. We had Savage, Al Spangler, and Lee Thomas. And Randy Hundley and Kenny Rudolph did most of the catching. So I just think that we had pinch hitters like Willie Smith and Gene Oliver and Nate Oliver, and Popovich, Paul Popovich. But we had a ball club that stuck together. I just think that we weren't tired. We just stopped scoring runs. Key base hits which won a lot of our ball games earlier in the year, and we'd have runners on base, couldn't get the key hit, maybe hit in double plays, sacrifice flies that didn't get us to enough runs. But I just think that we just stopped scoring runs.
Yeah, and the Mets were the miracle Met that season. I mean,
they won ball games 1-0, 2-1. I mean, they won 80% of their games, and we won like 35% the last 15, 20 games, because we had a pretty good lead, a 6.5 game lead, and a couple of road trips which didn't hurt us, but we just couldn't score runs.
Was there a pitcher you enjoyed going up against more than any other?
Yeah. Bob Gibson was the number one pitcher. They were in our division. The Cardinals-Cub rivalry was pretty strong, and whenever that situation happened, I pretty much pulled Bob Gibson or vice versa. But he was a tough competitor. I love to pitch in that kind of situation. Late in the season, I might get Seaver or I might get Steve Carlton. But I mean, that's the crux of what baseball should be all about. The number one against the other number one, and just go head and head and see what happens.
And when you and Gibson went at it against each other, if you blinked, the game would be over, because a lot of times those were 2-hour ball games, maybe a little bit less. And
we do some games an hour 40 minutes. Get the ball, throw strikes, and each pitcher gave up maybe 3 or 4 hits, and that was it. And then the final score was 2-1 or 1-0. And I mean, that's what pitching was all about in the 60s and 70s. So I just think that the game has changed a lot. It's turning itself around a bit, but it's going to take a little while longer.
Did Gibson ever try to intimidate you when you're up to bat to kind of throw inside or basically brush you back?
Oh, yeah, we had a few contests like that because, Lou Brock was our leadoff hitter. The second hitter was Kurt Flood, and then Shannon, and maybe Torrey, and then Spada worked out one. And I would let the hitters know, and so would Gibson. You can't have both sides of the plate. I'd brush guys off the plate, and I keep in the ninth inning. Carver would say, "Hey, watch out, things are going to happen," and I'd get brushed back. I think Gibby one time hit me. I've been hit a few times by opposing pitchers, only because I maybe knocked one of their hitters down or brushed him back. So it was just part of the game back then.
And I don't remember guys charging them out like they do today.
I pitched 21 seasons, 18 in the big leagues, never got charged. And I think it's just foolish. I mean, I pitched hard in. I hit a few people, and I didn't headhunt. That was one thing that I told myself, I'm not going to try to take somebody's job away by hitting him in the head, which the head is a small target. But when you start headhunting, you endanger that other individual's career, and that wasn't that type of pitcher.
Nowadays, it seems if a pitcher goes for the inner half of the plate, the hitter takes offense.
Well, yeah, I think it's just totally different. They jump around a little bit. The umpire gives them the benefit of the doubt. And if you throw hard and you get warned, and then the next time you're out of the ball game, which I just think that the game, to me, is cat and mouse, hitter against the pitcher. And if you take the opportunity for the pitcher to learn how to pitch and pitch hard in and to win ball games, I think you take that force away from him.
A pitcher that reminded me a lot of you was former Cub Greg Maddux. Did you teach him how to pitch?
No, I'd already been retired. He came up in like 87. He had a good off-speed pitch. He had late movement. I just watched him pitch when I was home watching ball games, but I never had the opportunity to show him how to pitch. I think he basically learned it on his own.
But you see number 31 out on the mound for the Cubs, and you say, "Wait a second, that's my number, right?"
Yeah, well, we were two different type pitchers. I threw the ball a little harder than Greg, and I had a good slider. And he probably had a slider too, but he had late movement. His ball against left-handed hitters would jump in on him a lot of times and catch that corner, and he had good control. I mean, he proved that he could win a lot of ball games. He won over 300. Similar to me, he had well over 3,000 strikeouts, less than 1,000 walks in his career. So he knew what the game was all about. and the game is about pitching. And if you're going to have a ball club that can win, you have to have good pitching.
Who was your favorite player growing up?
You know, I lived in Canada, and my dad, the odd time, would take me to Detroit. I've seen Larry Doby play quite a bit with the Cleveland Indians. Seen Jim Bunning pitch with the Tigers. You know, you see a lot of games on TV. Saturday NBC Game of the Week, they'd always feature either the Giants against the Dodgers or the Yankees against Cleveland, or the Yankees, against a contending ball club. So, seeing Mickey Mantle hit, Whitey Ford pitch, similar Marichal or Koufax pitch against Drysdale. So, I mean, that was the era that I played in, and a lot of the TVs were black and white. You couldn't really understand how big guys were until you got that opportunity to be on the same field with them. And I came into big leagues, I was 6'5", and I was just as big as some of these other guys. And then when you had that opportunity to stand by them, hey, their kind of stature was like you, so you just tried to prove that you had the ability and the staying power to play as good as your competitor.
A teammate of yours with the Phillies early on, Dick Allen, he was a big guy.
Dick was about 6'1". Let me tell you, a really strong athlete. I met Dick in 1962 in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Had an awesome opportunity to get to big leagues, and he got there quick, 64. Hit a bunch of home runs, really played well. He started off in the outfield, and then he went to third, and then eventually he went to first base.
Was there one batter, or maybe a couple, who gave you trouble?
Well, San Francisco, quite a few. Jimmy Hart, Will Mays, William Covey, Willie Kirkland. There were so many guys. You know, but Covey, because he was a left-handed power hitter, he couldn't make mistakes, especially the candlestick or in really. He would jerk that ball to the right center field or to right field. So he was a kind of a nemesis from time against me.
What I always enjoyed watching you pitch, because I remember you later on when you came back to the Cubs, was you just basically got the players out. You didn't have your speed like you used to on the fastball, but you knew how to pitch.
Well, that's it. I mean, I had learned how to pitch. Cal McClish took a couple of individuals to winter ball in Puerto Rico. He took Rick Wise, Grant Jackson, myself, and Pat Corrales was our catcher in the minor leagues. So the combination of those individuals, we could basically learn how to pitch because we'd been together for a while. And Cal McClish was kind of our tutor. He helped me out with my slider, a little more with my changeup, and I think the 2 years I pitched winter ball, I really understood what pitching was all about. I wasn't a thrower, so I could throw the ball, low 90s. Didn't change speeds, maybe back in the 70s and 80s. And that's what pitching was all about, pitching up and down, in and out, and changing speeds. And I got that opportunity to do it, and I got to the big leagues quick.
And pitching was all about complete games, too. One season you made 39 starts, had 30 complete games. Nowadays, if a guy goes 7 innings, that's a long outing for him. If you were pitching today, you probably could have lasted another 5 to 10 seasons with all the innings it would have taken.
Yeah, you're probably right. I had pitched 300 innings quite a few times, and I just think that because of the fact that Leo understood that I could carry myself late into the game, and I could bunt, move the runners up, or get a base hit, and I think that's a plus that kept me in ball games a little longer. I might pitch 10, 11 innings sometimes to win a ball game, and it just wasn't a pitch 9. If Leo thought that you were still in control of the game, you stayed out there, and that was a confidence factor for me.
You're the leader of what they call the Black Aces, the black players that win 20 games. You did it 7 times. Gibson did it 5. Do you ever tell Bob, listen, people talk about you all the time, but I had more 21 seasons than you did?
Well, from time to time, I would see him, and I would let him know, hey, I'm just as competitive as you are. I can win ball games because the guys behind me really play well for me. And I think that's a big plus. The Cardinal situation, the Cubs situation, and the rivalry was always going to be there, to win ball games and to stay healthy. That was a big thing in baseball. Don't get hurt. Don't get in that situation where you have to miss starts. I might get 36, 37, maybe even 40 starts in a season. And you got to stay healthy and go out there and try to win games for your ball club. And to pitch against certain individuals, I took pride in being able to say to myself, hey, when it came my time to pitch, I wasn't going to bypass anybody. It could be Drysdale, it could have been Marichal, Perry, Bunyan, Gibson. I wasn't going to bypass them because I was going to go out there because it was my turn to pitch.
Now, after your Cubs tenure, you go down to Texas, which is always a lovely place to pitch and play in the summer when it's about 105 degrees.
Yeah, it was warm down there, and I didn't mind it. I used to try to psych other players up by wearing long sleeve shirts all the time because I stayed in pretty good shape. I used to run early in the mornings or run during the game or during prior to the game batting practice and stay in pretty good shape because I think the lower half of your body has to be strong. So if you're a pitcher, you don't always pitch with your arm. You pitch your head and your lower half of your body, your legs. So I took that to heart because of the fact that if I want to stay out there, if it's 100 degrees, hey, I'm going to pitch hard because the guy that's opposing me is going to try to pitch hard too. He's not going to leave after 5 or 6 or 7 innings. So, and I had a lot of complete ball games in Texas, and I enjoyed pitching there. It was a fun place.
So you go from one basically old-time manager, Gene Mock, who was very intense, to Leo DeRocher, to what, Billy Martin? You didn't get any breaks.
Oh, geez. Hey, for like 11 years, one of the toughest managers in baseball. They said Walter Austin was tough and Dick Williams, but believe me, I had 3 of the toughest guys. Billy Martin at the end of the last 2 years, God, he was a tyrant, but he wanted to win. I mean, that's what baseball is all about. I mean, they were no nonsense managers because if you went out there and you didn't do a good job, I mean, you can't blame the shortstop. You can't blame the center fielder. You can't blame the catcher. I mean, it's all on you. And he didn't want to hear excuses. And I enjoyed that part of playing for Billy Martin.
And then you also pitched a couple seasons with the Red Sox in Boston. What was that like?
Pitching in Fenway Park was like Wrigley, small. They had a high wall there and left, and Yaz was a decent outfielder. So if I gave up, balls off the wall, he would hold guys to a single instead of them getting a double. But the smaller the stadium to play in, the harder I pitched, and that just made me a better ball player.
Did Gaylord Perry give you any tips about doctoring the ball when you were at the Rangers? Because I know he loved doing that.
Yeah, we were together 2 seasons. I tried it in one spring training in Port Charlotte, and I just couldn't throw strikes. I couldn't get it far enough in the strike zone so it would work. It would always drop, well before the plate, and I just couldn't throw strikes, so I just abandoned it. But when I watched him pitch, he was the master, believe me.
He said he was a better bat corker than ball doctor.
He knew what he was doing when he went out there. I mean, he was kind of a pitcher that, hey, when you go to war, you got to take all your tools with you.
And then after a second tour of duty with the Rangers, you come back to the Cubs for a couple of seasons.
Final 2 years, yeah. I was Lelia and I were teammates in Buffalo and Arkansas, and he became the manager, and I think Dallas Green was the general manager, and it was enjoyable to play for someone that you were teammates with. Unfortunately, the Cubs had a mediocre situation. We were making a lot of deals, and they didn't get good until '84. And when I went to spring training in '84, they were looking for younger pitchers, and I was 40 years old, and I was on my way out, and unfortunately, I didn't make the ball club and went on home.
What I enjoyed about you most when going to those games in '82, '83, we would sit, our season tickets were 2 rows from where you warmed up. I would yell, Mr. Jenkins, can I have the ball when you're done? And you always threw the balls to us. You always were good with the fans.
I enjoyed that. I mean, fans are part of what makes athletes perform well, because if you don't have fans cheering for you, I just think it's psychological. You want to perform for yourself, the team, and the fans. It's always good to have that home crowd cheering for you. So if I warmed up in the bullpen, as you said, I'd give balls away a lot. I always considered the fans the number one situation in baseball. And if they're knowledgeable and they know you, believe me, you're aces to them.
You were different than Bob Gibson because Gibson was the Braves pitching coach then. I thought he was still pitching because he never smiled. He was so intense.
He was so competitive. He wanted to win as a coach. I did the same thing when I was a coach. I coached for Texas, Cincinnati, and the Cubs. But, I mean, we were just different individuals. I mean, I like to smile. I like to sign autographs for the fans. He was just that kind of guy. He was personable. I think he was all business.
But you were both similarly competitive. It's just that one did it with a different facial demeanor, and Bob Gibson, that intensity was almost oozing out of every pore in his body. He just looked so stern.
Well, I think that was his demeanor. You know, I just think that everyone's different. Seaver, Carlton, Gibson, Drysdale, we all have a streak of what we want to do, what we think we should be doing, and you just got to, give the guy his due because he likes to do that. It makes him feel competitive. It makes him win, and I just think that's a plus for the individual.
So who's a better basketball player, Bob Gibson or you? Because you both played for the Globetrotters, right?
Yeah, we did. Bobby played for Crichton University. I didn't play university ball, but I played independent ball. We had a league in Canada where I played basketball, and it was classification basketball. I just think that when I joined the ball club with Meadowlark, Lemon, and Curly, I played 2 years with them. I played 2 seasons in the off season. I joined him in October, and I'd leave the team probably in January, and it was fun, and I really enjoyed it. It was a money-making situation for me. Back then we have to have an off-season job. We didn't make a whole lot of money. These guys make tons and tons of money now. I think in 1967. I was only making $25,000. I made almost that year in the Globetrotters. So. Wow. Staying with them for 2 seasons, I made pretty good money.
Now, when you went home in '84, was there a part of you that says, I'd really like to find another team and pitch for on the big league level?
The fire was out. When I retired, I wanted to retire as a Cub. I went to a couple of games in Detroit, and I talked to Sparky, and he asked me once, can you still pitch? I said, yeah, I can still pitch, but the fire was out. Cleveland phoned 2 years in a row. They said, we can give you that opportunity to win your 16 games to get to 300, which this is what I wanted to do. But as I said, the fire was out. I went home. My dad and I had a horse ranch together, and I decided to stay home. I had 3 daughters and my wife, and we decided just stay in Canada and to relax and watch other individuals play the game.
Did baseball have the same issue that football did with black pitchers, with black quarterbacks, thinking that a black pitcher wasn't smart enough to basically pitch? Or there was no stereotype in baseball?
Well, there weren't that many black pitchers. Probably a handful of them. Al Jackson and Bob Gibson. Oh, geez. I'm trying to think. Some other guys.
You go back all the way to Don Newcomb and Joe Black.
Yeah, Newcomb and, Mudcat Grant, Earl Wilson, Don Wilson with Houston, myself. There were maybe 10 black pitchers, but I didn't really feel that we were in a minority because of the fact that, they weren't giving us the opportunity to pitch. I always thought that if you could win the job and pitch, you were competitive enough to let the organization know that that's what it was all about, because they groomed you in the minor leagues to get to the big leagues. So why should they stop you all of a sudden when you've got that ability to become a major league ball player? I never felt that pressure.
Now, at the end of your career, did you look back on it and say, someday I'll be in the Hall of Fame, or how did you assess it?
Well, I pretty much knew after I won my 250th game that some reporters were mentioning, hey, Mr. Jenkins, you're going to get that opportunity to get put on that Hall of Fame ballot, and you might get a chance to get in the Hall of Fame if you could win a few more games. So I kept pushing myself to try to get as close to to 300 as possible, because a lot of the guys that I was playing with at the time played a little longer. Gaylord played a little longer, Seaver, Carlton, Sutton to get to 300. And I just told myself, man, 284 should get me that opportunity to really get some notice, and I think it did. I won, early in my career, I won those string of 20 games. That was a big plus, but I never played on a championship ball club that really, that's what every player wants, to have that opportunity to maybe pitch in a World Series, but it just didn't happen in my case. Got a little over 18 years in, and I won as many games as I could, and I just thought that the numbers I had were decent enough to be considered. And unfortunately, I didn't go in the first couple of ballots, but I went in the third. I went in with Gaylord Perry and Rod Carew, three pretty good guys, I thought.
Yeah.
What was it like when you went in? What were your thoughts?
I was a happy individual. My dad was still alive at the time. My family joined me there in Cooperstown. So it was a pretty nice situation to have your family, and especially have my father. My mother died young. So to have my father, who was an ex-ball player, there at that ceremony, and to have him smile the way he did, it really makes you feel good.
Now, also, you got honored a couple years ago with a stamp by Canada.
Yes, Black History Month. I had a commemorative stamp of me. They printed a little over 4 million of them, circulated through Canada, and I toured 46 cities in 30 days for that. Believe me, I was pretty tired when I was done. But it was quite an honor. My family was really, really proud, especially my kids. I just think that when the country that you're raised and where you're from honors you with a commemorative stamp, I was pretty proud of that.
So you got the country stamp of approval.
Definitely, yes, right.
After the 69 season, did you think the Cubs would be challenging again for the title?
Oh, yeah, we improved our ball club. We made a trade for Milt Pappas. We had Joe Pepitone on the team along with Johnny Callison. So we strengthened our ball club, an extra arm and a couple of bats that were definitely potent. So that Johnny Callison was a great outfielder, Pepitone a good first baseman, and Pappas, I think his first year with the ball club, won 17 ball games. So I just thought that we had a team to be contenders again. For 70 and 71, Pittsburgh beat us out. The next year, 71, it was the Cardinals. So we were contenders. Unfortunately, we just didn't win the big games.
What was your favorite moment in baseball?
Ooh, man, several. My first start, as I said, as a Cub and won. The first game I pitched with the Phillies, I beat Bob Gibson in relief in Philadelphia. Bunting had started against Gibson, and I come in like the sixth inning and pitched 4 innings of 2-hit ball and beat Gibson in the 10th inning. Corrales, in fact, got the key base hit. So, I mean, there were so many nice things, all-star games, things like that. But I look back, I was competitive. I enjoyed what I did, and I just thought that every time I put that uniform on, I wanted to try to win a ball game.
You still ranching?
No, I sold my ranch in 2002. Now I live in Arizona. My wife and I live in a country club, a little town, Anthem, Arizona, which is about 35 miles north of Phoenix, headed up towards Sedona.
Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, guys, enjoyed it. Take care and enjoy life. I'm out here in the Valley of the Sun, man. It's beautiful out here in Arizona.
We're jealous.
Maybe you'll get your...
All right.
Maybe the Cubs will bring you back this year because they need some pitching help.
Well, see, I'm out here with spring training. I see them all the time with my foundation. They got a good young ball club. They're struggling a little bit, but they'll get it together. And it's gonna take a couple of seasons for these young players to learn how to play together and learn how to win. So they're doing the right thing.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Fergie as much as David and I did. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will have former NBA star and Notre Dame basketball star Adrian Dantley. You're listening to Sports and Torts on TalkZone.com.